Fire Force by Atsushi Okubo, the creator of Soul Eater, his latest manga that's been serialized in weekly shonen magazine since 2015. We're going to be discussing basically around the first volume's worth of content. We know that the first 5 volumes are out by the time of this recording, but we didn't have time to read all 5 volumes, and admittedly, this is like a last-minute thing, in case you couldn't tell by our old roulette bit. Sket Dance has been delayed for a little while longer, but it's coming. Just like the dragons are coming in Game of Thrones, and his last 2 books, George R.R. Martin's last 2 books, they're coming, and they'll be epic. Just gotta wait a little while longer.
Oh, topical. So, Sid, what is Fire Force about?
Fire Force is a shonen battle manga about firefighters who fight fire with fire. But specifically, they don't just fight fires, they fight fire demon creatures.
Ooh.
People spontaneously combust into like these burning ghoul things, which are called the Infernals. And so, like, they're in this, like, horrible state where they're, like, these just monsters that are, like, lit aflame and they can't control themselves. And so, you know, the fire force is called in to put them down. And, you know, basically they have to kill people. But, you know, they treat it as, like, they're saving their souls. So they have, like, the church involved and stuff. And it's, like, kind of, like, more of a, you know, public relations thing in a way, to kind of, you know, soothe and comfort people because, you know, they have to put their family members down. So
they kind of treat it more like an exorcism almost.
It kinda, at least on the surface level, for the sake of the public, it's supposed to appear like that. In reality, they're more like, yeah, they have to kill these people essentially, which,
yeah,
you know, it's pretty harsh kind of concept. But it isn't that dark a series. At least not more so than this kind of monster / demon fighting kind of manga, which is very much what this is, just like Soul Eater. People kind of become these grotesque, like, monsters who aren't in control of themselves and kind of go insane, and then the protagonists are a group that have to kind of take them down, and, I mean, they sort of move up the ranks, I guess. And some of them can manipulate fires in very interesting ways because they're descendant of, like, first generation people who, like, first became Infernals. And so, like, subsequent generations of people have varying degrees of how much they can control their fire. And so the main character, Shinra, like, he can very easily control fire and, like, can manifest it from his, like, feet. And, like, use that to, like, fight. And then other people can, like, use special, like, igniters to summon fire. You know, these people being the second generation. And they can even create their own fire spirits, which look very much like how Souls and Soul Eater looked. Very, like, bulby, will-o'-the-wisp kind of things. Which are very adorable, and I assume are going to become great plushies if they are not already been made into them.
And I'm gonna buy one, because I want one really bad. They are so cute. Yeah, it's interesting, just kind of talking about Okubo real quick. It's really interesting, because I guess as far as how familiar we are with his other works, such as Soul Eater, this is my first time actually reading any of his manga, because I've seen all of the Soul Eater anime, but I haven't actually read it. I'd like to at some point. How about you, Sid?
I've read the Soul Eater manga. I got introduced to Soul Eaters through the anime, but then I moved on to the manga after I had finished the anime, and I kept up with that for about a couple of years until it ended. So I've, you know, had experience with Soul Eater, the manga, and Okubo's, like, style before, and what's very great about his art is, like, he is great at very, like, cool-looking, easy-to-follow action scenes. In the first volume, in like the third chapter, there's this really cool fight scene between the Maki, who's like a second lieutenant or something, and then the two newer recruits, our protagonist Shinra, and then his rival Arthur. And that's a really fun fight scene that flows really well. Like, there's a lot of cool, swift movement. Okubo is, like, really great at, like, this dynamic but very still simple and easy to follow kind of fight sequences. And I think that's, like, a large appeal of his manga. I mean, another thing is just that his character designs, like, he has, like, very sharp kind of character designs. Very cool facial expressions. Like, one of the big concepts in Soul Eater was, like, madness. So, like, there were, like, these really grotesque, like, grinning faces and, like, faces that depict any form of insanity to varying degrees, which were always very disturbing. And, like, he replicates that kind of thing in Soul Eater very well. And also, like, knows how to create very off-putting character designs as well, with characters with very disturbing eyes who look very unsettling, or, like, just characters who, when their face is in shadow and they have just these round, like, white pupilless eyes, look insanely menacing and monster-like. And his monster designs are also very good. We don't see too many varied ones in the first volume, but the simple, like, infernal design of just a guy being on fire is, in of itself, also very, like, horrifying, not just because of, like, what you can think of, this person being on fire and that being kind of horrific, but also just, like, in the way it looks and the way it's kind of drawn.
And his facial expressions, too, even though you could tell they're very simplistic, I feel like they still add to the design and make them that much more unsettling.
Yeah, you can tell that the Infernals are in pain. But when, like, they start introducing Infernals who are, like, more monster-like and, like, have their own kind of free will in the second volume, they become kind of like the monsters that you would see in Soul Eater. Very much like Ragnarok, Krona's weapon in Soul Eater, which was this, like, bulbous, like, shadowy black monster that just came out of that character's. So there's a lot of designs like that. So his design work continues to be great, which is really cool. But one thing that I guess I feel is lacking in the art of Fire Force is that what was also really distinct about Soul Eater was its setting, which took place in Nevada, the United States, and
did it really?
Yeah, it took place in Nevada. That's why there was desert everywhere. It was supposed to be in the Nevadan desert.
Wow.
But, Soul Eater was also kind of an international series because the characters were, like, traveling all over the world. So that gave Okubo a great chance to show his chops and draw very distinct, interesting and diverse settings from arc to arc. And also when, even when they were, like, stuck in one place, like Arachne's mansion or whatever, he knew how to make those kind of places look very creepy and otherworldly. That also gave that a great atmosphere. And I don't feel like he replicates it that well in Fire Force, because Fire Force takes place in, just a typical Japanese kind of town. So the setting isn't very impressive. So in regards to style, like, the fashion sense of the characters in Soul Eater was very punk, like, very, like, the epitome of what you would think would be cool character design in terms of, like, how the characters, were clothed and how distinct each one looked. There was a lot of diversity there, but unfortunately with Fire Force, like, they're all one police force, so they all have regulated police uniforms, which look fine. They're not bad uniforms, but everyone has them, and so they just don't stand out very well. Whereas in Soul Eater, each character design and sense of clothing and fashion really spoke a lot to their personality. You just don't get that with Fire Force because everyone is wearing the same attire, and they don't really have, like, crazy facial features or other design quirks, like that the kid's, like, 3 lines across one side of his hairdo, So the art and, like, aesthetics of it, I don't think it's, like, as striking and distinctive as Soul Eater. So, but, like, in terms of, like, the action choreography, it's still pretty strong, though, in the first 2 volumes, I don't think there's, like, anything as like impressive as Soul Eater just yet.
Yeah, I would agree. I couldn't help but, while reading through the first volume, I couldn't really help but feel like, you might disagree with me on this, but I don't know, for some reason, I kept feeling like I was reading something similar to, like, Blue Exorcist than I was Soul Eater. Like, Shinra's character design, to me, feels like if Okubo decided to draw Rin from Soul Eater,
Yeah.
and even like a lot of the like you were saying, the setting of Fire Force just is not as distinct as Soul Eater. Like the setting to me even felt kind of more like something you would see in Blue Exorcist as well. Like if it weren't for like one or two very Okubo character designs, and again a lot of the more demonic or will-o'-the-wisp kind of ghost designs, I never would have thought, oh yeah, this is the guy that did Soul Eater.
Yeah, it's more in line with Blue Exorcist, I guess, in that respect. Both Fire Force and Soul Eater are in the same genre of this like kind of monster fighting supernatural series. That Blue Exorcist is also in that same kind of genre, but I don't feel Fire Force is nearly as distinctive. And if you're comparing character designs, like the Shinra's character design looks more typical and more like plain than the likes of Soul and Maka, which were very unique looking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do agree. That's probably why I thought Blue Exorcist was, because not that I think I feel like Rin's design as far as Blue Exorcist goes, it's not a bland design, but it is a bit more distinctive than Shinra's design. But I feel like they kind of have sort of the same look to them. I feel like it's probably the hair, honestly. Maybe a bit of the face too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of these Fire Force characters do look like Blue Exorcist characters. I mean, there is like a certain different sensibility in the art style, so you couldn't totally mistake one from the other. But like in terms of like just the basic archetype of how they're drawn, like I think you could easily have both artists like draw the other series, and the characters would look pretty similar.
Yeah. And hell, even a bit of Shinra's character, I feel like, is, or I guess as far as his backstory goes, about how he lost his family, I felt like that was sort of similar to something in Blue Exorcist as well. Like the story somehow felt familiar to me, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's clear that Rin also is hiding. No, Shinra is also hiding something darker inside of him, some kind of demonic force, maybe. Just like Rin, satanic blood, because he's the son of Satan and stuff.
Yeah.
So, that's why Rin has his blue flames, and I'm sure, like, there's abilities that Shinra has that are because he has, like, some special, like, supernatural, maybe demonic ability as well. But that, I don't remember if they ever confirmed that later on. I should note that this isn't my first time reading Fire Force, because I actually kept up with it when it was first starting out and being scanlated, and I kept up for it for like 20 or so chapters. So I forget like how many volumes equivalent that would be.
I think that'd probably be probably 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
Probably somewhere around there.
But I wasn't very engaged keeping up to it week to week. I wasn't very impressed when it was first coming out. Rereading the first volume, I think that I'm actually seeing a lot more interesting things about it than I had seen the first time. But I can also see why I lost it. It lost my attention trying to read it week to week, because it gets off to a very slow start, I feel.
I thought as far as the first volume went, it was fine, but it had some moments in there, and there were aspects about the series so far that I really enjoyed. But yeah, I could see this being the kind of thing where I wouldn't think to start reading it week to week. This is the kind of thing that I would rather let build up and then maybe read a chunk of it later.
Yeah, I think that would be better served, because, again, I didn't feel that the character designs were that distinctive. I didn't think the premise was as interesting or, unique compared to other, these supernatural demon fighting series. And it takes until, like, the second volume, in the middle of the second volume, which was around, like, chapter 8, is when, like, the big mysteries start getting revealed. So, reading it week to week, I wasn't just engaged with the story or the characters. But reading it all at once, this first volume and then the second volume, I started to process more of it at once. And, like, kind of got into the flow of the story. This seems like it's a series that is better read in chunks than on the week-to-week basis, at least when it was starting out. And
No, I agree.
Going back and reading through it again now.
I guess as far as, like, characters go, there weren't too many that stood out to me other than Captain Obi and Maki. I thought were very interesting characters. I think my favorite part of the first volume is when I forget the guy in the glasses name. He's I think he's the second lieutenant.
Yeah, he's in he's like the he's the lieutenant. He's Takahisa Hinowa. He's the very stern, very serious character. That's his archetype.
It was really just on that note while we're talking about him. It was really like distressing to see him just like so willingly put out like the little fire spirits that Maki would conjure up. That was pretty sad. Those made me really sad because
that was a good gag for sure. Just like
the
reaction of Maki just like screaming very sadly.
I thought it came off almost kind of like, I don't know, something about that seemed kind of dark to me because it's like you're killing the spirit. But I still thought it was funny though. I really like the portion where Maki ends up sparring with Shinra and Arthur. Because I don't know, I really like seeing shonen manga where women can actually fight and hold their own, because they talk about how because the thing that kind of makes Fire Force interesting to me is that there are people from these different generations of people that have spontaneously combust that like can use their fire powers in different ways and to different magnitudes. And Maki, I think, is a second generation of that, where she can control fire, but like, she can't make her own fire. She can't ignite her own flames. So, she has a bit of power, but she's possibly not as strong as Shinra, who can, literally produce fire from his feet. He has a bit of an advantage in that case, but, Hinawa brings up how both him and Maki, I think, are from, they were both trained in the military. So they both know how to fight, which I thought that was really entertaining, seeing Maki actually fight Shinra. And then have Arthur come up, because his whole thing is that like he's very into knights and he wants to be a knight and he's obsessed with all that kind of stuff. If you couldn't tell, because his name is Arthur and that's the joke, Knights of the Round Table and all that. I think my favorite part in the entire first volume is where Arthur's all like, oh, well, a knight mustn't injure a princess. And then Maki just totally takes him out and is like, well, yeah, but knights are supposed to bow down before a princess. And I thought that was the most amazing thing in that first volume. That was pretty good.
Yeah, it's a great fight sequence, and Maki makes a very cool impression in that chapter. So, I mean, I'd expect as much from Okubo because, the protagonist of Soul Eater was Maka, and she kicked a lot of ass. And all, like, the women in that series were really cool and had good arcs. At least most of them. So, in that regard, I'm a little more disappointed in Fire Force because Maki does make a good impression in that chapter. But, like, she's, like, the one female character who does. I mean, Iris later, from what I remember, also becomes more interesting. Iris being the nun. And, like, the role of the church in the series is also very interesting. At least there's some very unique things that happen later. But I guess those two characters, Maki and Iris, are good. But, like, since they're not the focus like Maka was back in Soul Eater, I guess I feel a little more disappointed in that aspect, but they're still good characters.
I can see that, yeah.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of the character of Tamaki, though, who is introduced at the end of the first volume, and she's basically a character who was designed specifically to be a fan service character. I mean, her entire character design makes no sense other than to justify fan servicey moments. Because, like, she exposes herself very much, like, she doesn't wear a shirt, and she has these weird pants that, like, expose her tie, like, the sides of her thighs. And it's like, I don't know why those parts aren't covered up, but it's like, it's all in service of this fan service chapter in which she's introduced in which, like, male characters, mainly Shinra, like, end up groping her breasts and
under
ass.
the bra on accident, which, I'm sorry, doesn't happen.
Yeah, under the bra. And, like, the one that makes no sense whatsoever in terms of, like, how it could have possibly happened is, like, the last, like, accidental pervert moment that happens when, like, Shinra somehow gropes her butt, like, behind the slits in her pants. Like, she just somehow falls
That's
into
the reason
him,
why they're
and
there.
his hands, like, stick behind her ass, and he's, like, squeezing her butt cheeks, and it's like, okay, like, that makes no sense how that possibly could have happened on accident. And it also just goes to show, yeah, this entire character design was just to justify these accidental pervert moments. And, like, it's some curse called the chronic lucky letter lure, which is, like, literally putting, I guess, I don't know. It's like,
it's just an excuse for fan service. That's all it is, and it's stupid, and I hate it.
I see. When I was reading this week to week, and this chapter came out, this was like one of the moments where, like, I'm not sure about this series. this is very disappointing coming from Okubo. I mean, there was fan service in Soul Eater, but you know, this seems very blatant, like an attempt to, like, draw young readers to, like, see, maybe there are going to be more moments like this where like, Shinra is going to accidentally grope her. I don't understand why authors feel the need to do that. This reminds me of, like, M0, and, like, how in the later chapters of that series, there were so many more, like, perverted moments and cheesecake shots because the series was, you know, getting unpopular, and, like, I guess the author thought, you know, putting those fan service moments in might help boost it back up, and it didn't, and it just made those final chapters harder to read. And this felt like that. It felt like Fire Force didn't get off to a great start, so, like, his editors told Okubo to write a chapter of fan service moments to draw in readers, because I guess that works. I don't know.
We got to get some of that otaku money.
Yeah, I don't know if it, I mean, I don't know. Like, the otaku, I don't think is what, like, a manga like this is aimed at. This is aimed
of course, I'm mostly just being
young
facetious,
readers,
but yeah.
But I don't know. Again, this is just, like, some of the more baffling fan service happens with this character. And her personality isn't great either. She's just, like, a tsundere or whatever, so who cares about her? I mean, luckily she's not a main character. She's not even in the same team as the main characters, so that's good. She's, like, only a recurring thing, but yeah, I mean, that was very disappointing coming from Okubo, and, like, how well written, you know, his characters in Soul Eater were.
Yeah, that was definitely the point where I was audibly like, yeah, fuck off. This is dumb. Don't do this to me.
And it's such a shame in your case too, since that's the last chapter in the first volume.
It is, but I mean, at least the volume ends on a good cliffhanger, I think.
Yeah, it introduces Joker, who is, like, the overarching villain. And I mean, I stopped reading after 20 volumes. I have 20 chapters, but I think, like, he still remains major. The story moves in a very interesting direction, starting in the middle of, starting with volume 2, because that's when, you know, they explain, or at least introduce more the character of Joker, who appears at the end of the first volume. And then it also explains, like, that the group of Fire Force that Shinra is a part of, Company 8, is very unique among the Fire Forces because Company 8 is designed to keep watch and monitor the other 7 companies because the other 7 companies don't answer directly to, you know, the law or the government. Like, they have all special interest groups behind them. Like, one company answers to the manufacturers of the Fire Force uniforms, and then another company answers to the military. So Company 8 was organized to, you know, keep track and keep the other 7 companies in line. So that's very interesting. And then, like, the arc that begins in Volume 2, which was, like, the arc that I was reading when I was keeping up with this, is, like, them going against Company 5, which is the group that, you know, is backed by the manufacturers of the Fire Force uniforms. And they're very corrupt. And
interesting.
But there's also, like, some... Because the leader of Company 5 is also, like, is a woman, and they also have fan service moments with her that I wasn't
That's cool.
very much a fan of. But she was a good villain in terms of how, like, despicable she was, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
From what I remember, at least, but...
Wow.
I mean, I feel more willing to read more of Fire Force now, because I do see a lot more potential in it, rereading the first volume. There's still a lot of things that bother me.
Yeah.
But I feel like as time goes on more, whenever I happen to remember Soul Eater, I remember, wow, Soul Eater was really cool. And, like, I kept going through phases for a while where I was like, was Soul Eater as good as I remember? And then I go back to it a bit, and sometimes I'm like, maybe not, but then other times I'm like, yeah, Soul Eater's still awesome. And I feel like, you know, now again, I'm at this point where I'm remembering Soul Eater, I'm remembering, wow, Soul Eater did a lot of cool things. There are a lot of really cool things about Soul Eater. And so I feel like I want to give Fire Force more of a shot because I like that series so much. And I think that Okubo is a great artist and is also a pretty good writer. But compared to the first volume of Soul Eater, which was like 3 chapters, each dedicated to introducing one of the teams that would form the main group of characters in Soul Eater, like, the first volume of Fire Force is not nearly as engaging or unique.
No, I agree. Like, the first chapter, especially, to me, feels like just a lot of basically setting up the world and setting up Shinra and his character and what happened to him in his past and whatnot, and that's essentially about it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, just speaking personally, as much as I did not like the fan service near the end of the first volume, I would like to read more of this. I think this series has potential to be probably, I don't want to say like, oh, amazing, the best thing I've ever read, but, you know, I think it has potential to be a pretty good read, and I would like to see where it goes. And, I mean, like, I guess let's put it this way, like, I'm willing to read more of this than I was, say, like, Kakegurui, as far as, like, you know, series we decide to sample on the show or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I would recommend it then, at least to try it out if you like Soul Eater. But if you're not a fan of these supernatural, like, demon fighting shonen series, there isn't that much that sets Fire Force apart from any one of those, and there are better, like, examples in this genre that I think would be more appealing.
Yeah. But yeah, as far as a first sample went, I liked it enough. Aside from 1 or 2 moments, I enjoyed it. But I recognize that it's not like, you know, it's not doing anything that I haven't seen before. But like, Supernatural Firefighters is something that I think has the potential to be a really cool manga series. So I do want to read more of this when I get the chance.
Yeah, I got the first 4 volumes from the library. I only had the chance to read 2, but I do plan to continue reading the series whenever I get the chance to.
If I have some money to spare, you know, at one point or another, I have a couple extra bucks on me, I don't mind probably buying another volume of this over at Comixology or whatever, kind of like what I'm doing with Welcome to the Ballroom every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think this is it's a light recommendation, I'd say.
Yeah.
and I was just checking while we were talking. It's for some reason it's not being simul-published by Kodansha either. So, but there are 5 volumes of it out, so I think that's a good enough sample size if people want more than a volume to read. There's enough of it out there to probably see for yourselves if maybe this is a series for you.
And they release volumes at a pretty fast rate, like it's a bi-monthly schedule, so a new volume every 2 months. They are probably never going to catch up with the Japanese releases because the chapter sizes are pretty lengthy. A new volume of Fire Force also comes out every 2 months in Japan. So, if they only keep pace with a volume every 2 months, they won't catch up. But it's all the same, that means you'll get 6 volumes a year, so it's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Okay, I think that about does it for our discussion then.